Yes. Good. Okay, so just thinking, as I said, just thinking, 1 little hour here, make the most of it. We'll all think some thoughts, and I'm listening just as much as you, even though the words are coming out of my mouth. So imagine this advice is coming directly from the Buddha. And it's advice that he has put into practice, which turned him into this amazing person, and which he has found is the potential for all of us. This is the point, you know. So, I mean, so maybe that's something to talk about. You know, when we hear, and maybe that's something to talk about. We know if we want to learn cooking or music or maths, you look for the person who's embodied that. It's called a good musician or a good cook or a good mathematician. We look for that. It's really obvious. We can read in books. There's so much in books these days, and books are written by people, but we know we need the human person in front of us, you know. That makes all the difference. We need, we call it, there's a nice word we use in the West, mentor. It's very nice. It's probably a Greek word. All our fancy words are always Greek. What's the definition of mentor? Mentor. Mentor. It's a nice word. Mentor or mento. Wrong one. Mentor is an experienced and trusted advisor. Oh my goodness, do we not need them? But as soon as we say the word guru, we have a panic attack, you know. We think, oh, I've got to give up my will and just do whatever they say and jump off a cliff if they have to and do naughty things, and they're going to abuse me, and we have these bizarre ideas. So maybe we should use the word mentor. A well-educated advisor. How incredible. Whatever it is. It's a person, basically it's a person who knows what they're talking about. We all need them badly. So don't call it a guru if you don't like. Don't worry about it. Remember, Lama Yeshe said the Buddha's dead, you know. The Buddha's dead. We can read his books. We can go right back and check all the amazing people between now and the Buddha. But the one we need most is the person right in front, looking like me, sounding like me, who shows me what I can become. This is so sensible. We mightn't have to use that word, but it's sort of evident. We all need that. Even at school, some of us had very special teachers. We'll never forget them. I'll never forget Miss Holton when I was 5. It was a nun school, all the Catholic nuns. You know, of course, they were very severe looking, and you got scared of them and these black things and their round faces and everything. But still, there were some wonderful nuns, very kind nuns, some a bit mean. It's okay, they're humans. But I remember Miss Holton, she was a lay teacher. And she was, when I was in the first grade, we went to this French convent. So I don't know if they still do it in France, but the numbers of the classes were backwards. We were in elementary class. We were in elementary, which is actually the first grade. Then we went to 10th grade, 9th grade. We call them class. 7th class, 6th class, 5th class, 1st, 4th, 2nd, 1st, and then upper class. That's what we called it. It was a French system. The nuns of the Sacred Heart, I remember them. Anyway, when I was in elementary, great, you know, babies, Miss Holton was just the general teacher. And I don't know why I liked her. I think I liked her because she hugged me one day. It sounds so silly. My mother was kind and she hugged me, but you know, I remember Miss Holton hugged me. But I'll never forget, she had this perfume. She smelt lovely. Maybe my mother didn't wear perfume. I'll never forget Miss Holton's perfume. And she had this bright scarlet lipstick. It would have been in 1949. I'll never forget Miss Holton. I just love Miss Holton. That's all I can tell you. I remember her vividly. And even more amazing, when a new girl came, Jane, who became my best friend. I felt so proud that because I was always a naughty girl, you see. So Miss Holton put me in charge of Jane, the new girl, to take care of her. So of course I fell in love with Jane instantly. And then Jane became friends the next year with Penny. And I was devastated ever since, brokenhearted that Jane gave me up for Penny. You know, talk about trauma. Never mind. Anyway, I loved Miss Holton. So there's a simple example. It's sort of so obvious. We're humans. And because the way the Buddhist talks about it, because we've got this ridiculous misconception deep in the bones of our being that is sort of the irony of ego, that we cling to this self-existent me, that it's not a happy feeling. It's a really distressing feeling. It makes us feel separate. It makes us feel bereft and lonely and separate and concrete and no good. This is the irony of ego in Buddhism. So that drives all of us. So naturally, in the bad way, attachment feeds into that. Attachment is this neurosis that over-exaggerates all the gorgeousness of all the people out there. And why would you exaggerate the gorgeousness of people out there? Because you think you're a creep. So the irony of ego in Buddhism is that we think we're creeps. We're hopeless, no good, separate and lonely. So the neuroses, like attachment, is this emotional hunger that is hungrily looking out there for approval. And that's the main attachment, more than sex, drugs and rock and roll, I promise you. So that's the neurotic side of it. So that part of me was being fed by Miss Holton. She didn't do it, I did it. My little needy little Bobsy in there. But when it's the good side of us, that's when it's so marvelous. That's when it's so special, you know. The good side, we've got the neuroses and the virtues. This is the way the Buddhist psychology describes, which is not the way we talk in our culture. So we've got the unhappy, all the voices of ego, the unhappy attachment, and then the hurt and the aversion when it doesn't get what it wants, and all the other dramas. And then we've got the virtues, the good ones, love and compassion, connectedness, and they're the ones that connect to others in a valid way, in a healthy way. So if we've got more love than attachment, since a little girl even, we'll be a healthy human being. If we have more attachment than love, we'll be miserable, suffering, dissatisfied, always seeing the bad, always, getting upset by people, never believing people love me, always wanting more. We'll always be miserable. And we can see this so clearly in us. It's very fascinating, So to have a person out there who is a worthy object of our heart. Lama-Yeshe would say, we're all dying for love. It sounds so sweet to put it that way. We're all dying for love because we have this dualistic sense of self. I mean, the Buddhists, you say, when you eventually become a Buddha, it sounds very weird to us. There is no longer a separate sense of self. You're so vast and so amazing and so blissful, and you have such connection with every being and such love and compassion for them. Can you imagine that? How joyful. So we've got to train that part of ourselves. So what better way to do that than to find a valid person out there who is a mentor? What's that definition again? It's beautiful. What is it? I forget. Educated, I want to get the definition clear. It's a gorgeous definition. It's a wonderful person to have in your life. An experienced and trusted advisor. Well, that is exactly a guru. The word in Sanskrit apparently is heavy with qualities. Well, I always use the example when I learned to make a cake from my mum. I was 26. It was the first time in my life I wanted to make a cake. I always use this as the example of finding a guru, quote unquote, finding a mentor, finding a trusted and whatever I keep forgetting, a trusted and, a trusted mentor, I keep forgetting it, mentor, an experienced and trusted advisor. So this is a really crucial point. We're going to find one of them to give our heart to, so they can help us grow our heart. That's the job. If you want to grow your cooking, you need to find a cake maker. You're going to grow your music, you need to find a musician. And we all know with a musician and a cake maker, we don't just leap in and choose that particular person because he looks cute. We check their credentials. We do our market research. We do our due diligence. But unfortunately, as soon as it comes to a spiritual mentor, we lose all common sense. You go to some teaching, oh, wow, he's so charismatic, he must be a Buddha. And then you want to jump on you and then you want to sue him because you didn't check carefully. So we become babies when it comes to spiritual, We use much more common sense and much more intelligence when it comes to becoming a musician or a cook. We'll do incredible research. We'll check their credentials. I mean, certainly in America, I've noticed, look what people do when your child first goes off to university. I mean, the unbelievable work you do. You travel over the damn country to find the right university, with the right dorm and the right this and the right teachers. You don't just leap in any old place. If we did that research to find a spiritual mentor, we'd get in line real quick, I promise. And we choose the right people. Because I always quote, because as Babonka Rinpoche says, you better choose your mentor very carefully because you're going to end up like them. That's pretty obvious. I remember vividly when I was living in New York in the 70s and I was a feminist moving towards my spiritual path where I was a very serious feminist. So I started doing karate and I wanted a woman teacher. That's what I wanted. It was my main important point then. So I found this really good dojo downtown in Manhattan. All these women. I was a lesbian at the time. I remember I always laughed about it. Across the road was Dyke's Lumber. I always remember that. It was downtown south of Wall Street. And our dojo was opposite from Dyke's Lumber. I remember that. We women would always laugh. Anyway, I remember having this woman called Susan. She was the teacher. And I chose it because it was women. And I fell in love with one of the women there. And I lived together. We lived together in the village. All my friends were from that dojo. And it was a very good, important time for me. But I chose her because she was female. So then I did the karate there for about a year. I got to about the 4th belt or something. I loved martial arts. I did it earlier in Australia. Then when I got back to Australia, I decided, and by this point I'd sort of given up hating men. I realized I couldn't keep hating half the human race, so I made this big shift. So I went to find the same karate school, and there was a male teacher, and that was a big move for my mind because I realized it was absurd to hate half the human race, you know. So anyway, I chose this dojo. It was the same karate, same style. So I told him I was in the 4th belt, whatever color it was. So after the first class, he very politely called me out at the end, and he said, "I'm sorry, Robina, you've got to go back to the white belts. You're not qualified." I was so offended. I was so upset, so insulted. You know, and I thought about it, and that was the time. It was about another year before that, another year soon after, less than a year later, I bumped into my teachers, my mentors, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. I became a Buddhist. So I was moving in that direction, you know. But I was very fiercely in a time in my mind, philosophically, very fiercely into this approach that you're the one who does the job. You're the one who makes the decision. You know, instead of just being like a little mouse and following everybody else. So the idea of a teacher was rather disgusting to me. I didn't want to know about it. But that was the time when I learned that I'd chosen the wrong teacher. I'd learned wrongly for 1 year. She was a nice person. The women, it was the best time of my life. Close friends I met, so I'm not complaining about it, but I chose her for the wrong reason. I didn't do my due diligence. She wasn't good at karate, so I learned wrongly. So I had to start again. I learned that really quite a profound teaching for me. You know, if you want to learn something, yes, I've got to do it. Yes, I'm the one who has to do it. I'm the one who's the boss. I say that all the time, but I had to choose the person. So you choose your guru, you choose your mentor. The way we are in spiritual is so wrong, so wrong with the way you misunderstand it. Of course, you choose that university, you choose that violin teacher. You don't sit there like a mouse and get bullied around by any old violin teacher who tells you what to do. You choose them. And then what do? When you choose that violin teacher or that teacher that, you know, when I did my karate later, I did Kung Fu in England when I was already a nun. And I chose this time, this Mr. Lee. I chose him. So think what this means. I gave Mr. Lee permission to teach me Kung Fu. That's when you choose the right teacher. You are very powerfully involved. It's a dependent arising. You are a serious play a serious role in this relationship. But the point is, what is the relationship? Well, there's the expert. That's the expert. The mentor is the expert, and you are learning. So you shut up and you listen. So to have humility, in other words. Now, we mistake that for low self-esteem. Kind of become a little mouse, and the teacher bullies you around, and then you sue them because they upset you. We're such children, you know. We've got to be adults. Okay, when you're 5 years old, you can't choose your teacher. But we're big girls now, you know. So choose. I mean, this is how, and this is the benefit of Islam. As she said, you know, Buddha's dead. The Four Noble Truths will not become real for you until you hear it from the mouth of this is my words, the mouth of a person in front of you. And who's that person? The person you want to, you know, you can't just listen to anybody tell you how to make a cake. We do, because we all just say, oh, I know how to make a cake, and we'll believe anybody. So even my cake making, the example I use, I was 26 and it was the first time I wanted to make a cake. I was a hippie in London. This is before feminism. Hippie was my third phase of philosophy, maybe my second. Catholic first, then hippie, then communist, then black politics, and then feminist, then Buddhist. Very distinct periods, phases in my mind, you know. So I was hippie at this point, and I wanted to make a carrot cake, so I was going home to Melbourne anyway. And I remember very distinctly realizing my mother, she'd always been there for 26 years that I had lived. My mother had known how to make cakes. She had the common sense not to push cakes down my throat. But this is the crucial point about a mentor. You have to want to learn what they have to teach. And that's why in Buddhism it is rude and bad manners and anywhere plain absurd to try and convert people. This is kind of really ridiculous. To manipulate people, to brainwash people and manipulate them to think like you is the most appalling idea. And anyway, it doesn't work. You have to choose. So there it was. My mother must have been so joyful when I finally said to Maman, please show me how to make a cake. She probably burst into tears, not in front of me anyway. So she finally made me a cake. And now you listen to this. It was really true. That was the first time that cakes became real for me because I chose. I wanted to make a cake. I did my market research. I tasted my mother's cakes. I tasted her students' cakes, her daughters, my sisters. Her peers said she was a good cake maker. That's how you choose anybody. That's how you choose a Kung Fu teacher. That's how you choose a violin teacher. You know, you listen to people's research, you check it up, you hear other people's opinions, and then you finally make your own decision. That's how you teach. You find your mentor. Now, I mean, Miss Holton, for me, because she was kind to me, she hooked me. She hooked me. I would do anything she said. Yes, Miss Holton. So I learned 1 + 1 is 2 from her. Didn't learn much more, but there you go. You choose. It's so logical. And there's an obvious, necessary relationship. Because the other thing is, it's an incredible method, isn't it, for lifting yourself up. There we are without the irony of ego, always feeling we're not enough and we're not good enough. But if we find a person out there who is the embodiment of that thing we think we'd like to do, they shine in front of you. They give you courage. Then they're nice to you and like you and can see your potential. You want to please them. It's a good thing. You are dying for love. And nothing wrong with wanting to please your mentor. If it's the neurotic little needy girl in you wanting to be stroked, that's not cool. That's why your mentor needs to be wise. They don't feed into your neediness and stroke you all the time. They might ignore you because they know your mind. Certainly the lamas, the mind is the expertise of the Buddhist mentors. Cooking was my mother's expertise. Music, you know, Kung Fu was Mr. Lee's expertise. The mind is our Buddhist mentors' expertise. They want, and what are they trying to show us? What are they trying to teach us? They're trying to get us to see our own mind. How do we see our own mind? So one time, for example, I went to see Lama Zopa. I'd chosen Lama Zopa, right? He was one of my mentors. He's one of my mentors. I chose him. He was sitting there basically twiddling his thumbs for 10 years. It's a good example. When I first met the Lamas, it was Lama Yeshe I connected with. Straight away, I connected with him. Then Lama Zopa was there at my first teaching, but he was always kind of behind Lama. I could see he was a holy person. I could see he was valid, but he didn't connect with my heart. And I think I mentioned this before. I had a dream at my very first, my long retreat, a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, very intensive, 3 months sitting there 12 hours a day doing purification practice, you know, plenty comes up. So I remember I had a vivid dream. This is about the year after 6 months after I'd become a nun, 2 years after I'd met the Lamas. Yeah. And I had a vivid dream in which Lama Zopa was there, and it was the place Nalanda Monastic University ruins. This amazing place, this vast, extraordinary place. It was an amazing place of knowledge in the Buddhist world in India, 7th, 8th, 9th, up to about the 11th century. And as always, Holiness Dalai Lama always says, we carry on the Nalanda tradition, or the greatest scholars in all the body of knowledge in Buddhism. You'll see their names all the time: Atisha and Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Asanga, all these people. And because Tibetan Buddhism died down in Tibet, unfortunately, it coincided with the influx of Muslims. That's the way life is, isn't it? It's karma. And then, but by the 7th, 8th century, it was already flourishing in Tibet and hasn't stopped in there. Even out of exile, it's still flourishing in an unbroken chain of 1,200 years of amazing scholars, mentors. So anyway, the dream was a vivid dream of us, a whole group of students with Lama Zopa at Nalanda Monastery ruins. We go there every year and we do our pilgrimage. We haven't done one this year, unfortunately. The first time since 2001. They raised money for our prison project. Anyway, it's one of my favorite places on the pilgrimage. It's wonderful, this vast place. And they even say only about 10% of it has been unearthed, you know. And when all they started burning down the monastery, they tell you that the library took, what was it? 10 years, no, the library took 6 months to burn or something, whatever. Anyway, it was devastating when it stopped there, but already it's flourishing in Tibet. So these mentors, gurus, I'm purposely using the word mentors. So anyway, I had this vivid dream, and Lama Zopa was there and outside and all the group, and Rinpoche called me out, and he put a text that, you know, Tibetans have these long folio single sheets in their text. They, you know, still have them, and they're wrapped in cloth. So they're very big and they're kind of floppy. So he put one of those texts over my shoulder, and he put his robe over my other shoulder. And then he told me to follow him out. So it was a very nice dream, I thought. At this point, Lama Yeshe, as far as I was concerned, he was my mentor. I, requested him to be my guru. Actually, I informed him. I didn't know you were supposed to ask. I was very arrogant. But in my heart, he was my teacher, my mentor. And then Lama Zopa, and then this dream, I told a Lama in Dharamsala. He said, oh, that's the Lama who leads you into enlightenment. And I was very surprised, because I'd always felt that Lama Yeshe was my main mentor, you know. But so there it was in my mind. I realized, because there's a very close connection between those two Lamas and their students. We often we are, but usually the students of Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa is our Lama as well. Anyway, I knew in my head that he was one of my teachers, my Lama, my mentor. But it took me from that period, what was that? I forget the years, 78. 88, it took me 9 years from that time for the penny to drop and my heart to know he was my mentor. So this is my interesting point. He knew already I was his disciple. He knew we had this relationship and he was my mentor. I'm using that word purposely, not the word guru. But I wasn't ready. So my mother, she knew already, she probably could see I could be a really good cake maker, but she didn't force me because I didn't want it. So there's no benefit in shoving it down your throat. That's the wisdom of that. So you need this wisdom. So the Lama is so wise. Your mentor's so wise. Any mentor in any field, your music mentor, whatever, they're wise. They can see you. They see your potential. So they will give you their knowledge in the way that you want it. So Mr. Lee, my Kung Fu master, I went to classes 6 days a week. When I was living in London, I went sick. He taught in 3 different dojos, and I went all around London. Even when I had a broken leg, or I broke my leg in Kung Fu, I'd go every day on the tube to Golders Green, and I'd watch the class, broken-hearted. I couldn't be doing it, you know. So I went every day to Mr. Lee's classes. He wasn't stupid. He could see I wanted his Kung Fu, so he gave it to me, and he pushed me to the limit. He could see my Kung Fu coming. He knew that was his expertise. So he gave me my Kung Fu, and he pushed me. I didn't feel insulted. I didn't want to sue him when he shouted at me after our 30th push-up on our knuckles. More, Robina, it's only your body. I didn't get upset. I'd given him permission, had I not? This is the point. So I've given Lama Zopa now, after 10 years of finally noticing, and Lama Yeshe, I gave them permission to show me my mind. That's their job. So it might not come in a happy package, because they're wise and they only want you to grow in your mind and develop your amazing potential. That's their expertise. So if you've chosen properly and you have confidence in that person's skill, like I had Mr. Lee, you'll do what they say. You'll listen. You'll take the lesson. So one time, for example, Lama Zopa, you know, I wanted a meeting with him. I was in France, and I asked Annette, his attendant, I just mentioned I want to have a quick question. And I stood outside the room, and I could hear Rinpoche in there, and hear Annette, Rinpoche, Robina's outside, like a quick question, no answer. She repeated it, no answer. She repeated a third time, no answer. So she came out, and it's kind of like, what to do, Robina? So I had to walk back to my room, you know. So I'm going to be childish and egotistical. Why doesn't Lama Zopa want, how dare Lama Zopa ignore me? No, I thought, oh, there's a learning. I obviously don't need to ask a question. But if I hadn't chosen Rinpoche properly, I'd be offended. But I chose him. I trusted him. So that was his teaching for me. No words. Go back to your room. But you'll choose carefully. We need one of them. And our heart is in that. You want to please your guru. I mean, if you've had devotion in God, it's the same. If you love Jesus, it's the same. I promise you. I loved God. I was in love with God. I was in love with Our Lady. I was in love with the saints. Didn't care much about Joseph. We had a statue of him in our chapel. Our Lady on one side and Joseph on the other. But I didn't care much about Joseph. He seemed to be second, kind of way out there. Our Lady was the main one, wasn't it? Our Lady and God. Our Lady and Jesus, they were the main ones, weren't they, Rosanna? Anyway, I loved Our Lady, and I loved Saint Therese of Lisieux. She was my hero. And I loved God, but I didn't care much about Jesus. That's very curious, isn't it? I loved God. This all-knowing, all-seeing, all-pervasive energy that existed everywhere. I'd think all the time, God is everywhere. I'd think, God is in the light switch. I couldn't get it. God is in the margin of my homework, you know. I couldn't get it. God is everywhere. I'd struggle to understand it. Anyway, mentor. And it's just meaning just a person who has knowledge, and you want that knowledge. The quickest way to get that knowledge, baby, open yourself to that person. I mean, I've talked about this before. Open your heart, but you've got to open your heart to a worthy person, not some peanut. So you check carefully. And when you're confident, then you commit. Then all the knowledge will come flooding in, you know. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about a mentor today, but it happened. I did. So it's already half an hour gone, like a dream. I've rabbited on it for 20 minutes. So ask me some questions, please. Come on. Anything at all you want to know. Anything at all. Any question at all you'd like to ask me? Nothing. You're going to make me talk again, okay? Come on, something. Nothing. Anything. Okay. Diagnostics. Who's that? Who's Diagnostics iPhone?
Is that me?
That's you, sweetheart. But who are you besides being Diagnostics iPhone? What's your name, sweetheart?
Oh, Jane.
Hello, Jane. Talk to me, darling.
Well, I have been in therapy for about 8 years with
Yes.
an amazing man who is a Buddhist.
There you
And
go.
he, huh?
Yes, I'm listening.
Oh, yes, and he's a Buddhist. And so it's very interesting hearing you speak about, I mean, your definition of the mentor. It's exactly what he is.
There you
And
go.
I think this opening the heart thing to him, I have not done it. And he has been pushing me lately, and I've gotten all ego tight. I don't think I need this anymore. And it's been going on with me for about 2 months. I think, though, you nailed it, Robina, when you said about opening your heart to the mentor. You've got to have some level of trust.
That's
And
right.
I do have a trust in him. I do. I actually do. I think I'm realizing it now enough to open up rather than, I don't know what my resistance has been. I think, I
Okay,
love
well,
how you say you love, oh, go ahead.
no, I'm just listening, Jane. I'm just listening. So, but I need to ask you a question. You see, many people who are therapists, they tell me that that is their role. I mean, that's the Western modern 21st, 20th century model of having a person close to whom we've checked on, whom we trust, whom we admire, and often we fall in love with. All the rubbish can be there too, but who's the person we do open our heart to, and why. And this is the real point about the mentor, Jane, is in a sense, the relationship has got nothing to do with them. Our normal way of thinking of a relationship, and this is where the problems start, certainly with therapists and clients, especially if the therapist is not very skillful, you start becoming this codependent, attached relationship. And that becomes disgusting because that's not the relationship. Like in other words, my gurus are not my girlfriend and boyfriend. They are people, always will have that role, and I'm using them as a mirror for me to become like them. And it's not like a normal relationship. It's a very different kind of relationship. So the problem often with therapists, and I'm not talking about yours, and we're regular people, and you can start getting carried away with our reputation, and it often can become really abusive and codependent and attached, and we've got to watch that like a hawk. And often we treat our gurus like that too. We're not, I mean, if someone's at my guru, they're not my girlfriend, they're not my boyfriend, no matter how casual they are. We've always got to remember, and of course in the Buddhist view, they treat that, there's a great length of incredible way they go into this in detail, but it's a really important distinction to make. So yes, you must have an open heart, Jane. Otherwise, if our heart isn't open, which means devoted, if we're not devoted, then nothing goes in, But the trouble is, as soon as we do that, it often becomes attachment, and then we fall in love, and then that's a disaster.
Yeah.
You get me?
Perfect. Thank you. He's married, thank God.
That's right. So in a way, you don't, that's why to go beyond the therapy client relationship is a dangerous thing, and any good therapist will never do that. And that's exactly what a guru should be. It always remains that role. And maybe it stop at some point. I mean, maybe at some point people do give up going to their therapist, but you'll always remember them. Like I always remember Miss Holton. Always remember her. I haven't seen her since I was 4, for God's sake, or 5. That doesn't matter. She's in my mind. She was a powerful person for me. And that's why often in the Buddhist view, they talk about your merit field, all your teachers over the years. You have them all up there, and you see them all as a manifestation of this marvelous energy that you want to become. And you keep them as something very special. That's really important, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
I'll be communicating, darling.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jane. So very interesting point. Thank you. Who else, people?
Good morning, Venerable Robina.
Hello, Afisha, darling. You're still in Bali? Or they let you into Perth yet?
I am still in Bali.
I think give up on Perth, darling. I mean, you shifted. You're in Bali. Be happy in Bali. Come on. Who knows?
I am happy in Bali.
I bet you are. Who wouldn't be happy in Bali? Which part of Bali are you? Denpasar or up in the mountains?
I am in Denpasar, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Kuala.
Okay, good. When I was there in 1974, I used to walk naked on the beach smoking marijuana. I bet I couldn't do that now, could I?
No, you can't. It's not happening right now.
I couldn't believe it. I'd sit on the beach naked. I was so rude. I can't believe myself in this gentle.
I'm not that
So
rude or
no one
brave.
arrested me smoking my marijuana as well. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, darling, never mind. Excuse me. Talk to me.
I had a clarifying question. How do you know the difference between your root guru and just a regular guru?
Oh, I know, darling. Root guru is so simple. It's like your mummy lama, the one who touches your heart most, the one you think about most, the one you refer to in your heart, you think about. It's just the one you're close. You mightn't see them. I mean, Lama, a good example is Lama Zopa. His root guru was Trijang Rinpoche, in fact, one of the gurus of the Dalai Lama. He knew him since he's a little boy. And then Lama Yeshe, who became Lama Zopa's guru when he was about 12. And Lama Zopa spent all his life with Lama Yeshe, all his life until Lama Yeshe died. But his root guru was always Trijang Rinpoche in his heart. He probably never saw him. So it's the one, maybe the first, not always the first, but the person whom you feel just in your heart is the one you think about. I mean, many people, for example, have His Holiness the Dalai Lama as their guru, but he mightn't be their root guru, even though he's like the top guru in the world. That's not the point. It's your own personal connection, the one who touches your heart most, the one who's helped you most. That's your root guru. But you've got to feel that. I mean, you understand. And that
Yeah.
even though we could have many gurus, we can have many gurus. And in the end, though, the really important, and this is where it gets a bit more esoteric. I mean, really, the more we understand what the word Buddha means, it's referring to this unmanifest, all-knowing, all pervasive or compassionate energy that is not physical. That's Buddha. So the really important one is, no matter who your root guru is, and whether one guru teaches you the simplest little teaching or one guru teaches the most extensive tantric teaching, in your heart they're all the manifestation of the same Buddha. That's a really powerful attitude to have. Or you can think, if you're one that you're closest to, you can feel every time you go to a teaching, you can feel that Lama is a manifestation of your heart guru's mind. So all my Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe are my root gurus, both of them, right? So when I've got many teachers, they're all like in the same family. I learn the different teachings from different Lamas. And the way to make it feel close for me, I often feel that they're simply manifestations of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe. Then it just tricks with your mind to make you feel connected.
Okay.
Do you understand
Thank
that, darling?
Yes, that was really clear. Thank you.
Good. We choose, darling. We choose, Many people think it's sort of it's set in stone who it would be. Not at all. We're the one who chooses.
Okay.
This root is it's sort of like your mummy lama, the one you feel closest to, the one you think about most, the one who affects your heart, affects you most, somehow has. And even again, like I said, Trijang Rinpoche and Lama Zopa never saw him hardly, but still he called him his root guru. So it's
Okay.
you work it out yourself.
Yes. Thank
Good.
you.
Good, Afisha. Thank you so much. What else, people?
Hi, Venerable Robina. This is Victor.
Hello, Victor. Happy to see you, sweetheart.
Good to see you too.
Yes.
It's amazing that you're talking a topic that's in my head for the last couple of weeks.
Good.
And you keep talking about qualifications to find a mentor. Can you just be I just want to know I'm making the right choice of asking someone to be my guru.
Well, the ideal qualifications is they've got a list. You got the first level of your guru, then you got a Mahayana guru, then you got the Tantric guru, and there's a list of examples. I should know them. Let me just read them out to you. List of 10. We'll just see for qualities of a Mahayana guru. Even in the end, if you listen to Lama Zopa, I'll just see if I can find them. I should know them, but of course I don't. If Mahayana, no, it's not the one. Chief characteristics. Okay, no, it's not the one either. No, I can't find. There's a whole series, and if you look in the Lamrim, you're going to find, Victor. And if I'll find the source, I'll show you.
Okay.
But basically, the real point is this. Not the real point. The basic qualities have to be related to the mind, because that's what a Lama is. My mother could have been badly behaved when it comes to, making something else, but she was an expert in cakes. Mr. Lee was an expert in Kung Fu. I didn't expect him to have ethics and other things, but a Buddhist is a person who's manifestation of Buddha. So the ideal, this is sort of a bit catch-22. The best guru in a human form is one who is already a Buddha. Now, catch-22, who knows who a Buddha is? We don't, Victor. So what can we go by? The very basic one has to be, you go by what appears. So the very first level of practice, which is the Hinayana level, which is the first scope of the Lamrim, the first and second scope, that's all to do with impeccable ethics, impeccable behavior. So if you look at for example, His Holiness, what you see is impeccable behavior. He ticks all the boxes for the best behavior possible. Now, That means a person who is going to be your guru, you know, at that level, you make sure that they put their money where their mouth is. They've got to put their money where their mouth is, as far as you can see. You listen to their teachings, you check their teachings, you've read the teachings, it seems to sync with what you've read. You see their students. One of the powerful ways to check on a guru, you see the students of a guru. And if they are good quality, you know, if they seem to like, and they've got devotion and they behave fairly well, that's a really powerful test. I mean, with my mummy and her cakes, I tasted her students' cakes. And that's the best way to prove the pudding, you know, to prove the pudding. So there's, you should look, you check their behavior, they check the way, what they teach, you check how they teach, you check, you know, that's a really powerful way to look. That's the external. Now, if you looked at His Holiness, that'd be good enough, because you see this utterly perfect behavior. Now, they talk about at the tantric level, when you read all the tantric literature, for example, and you hear about, you know, Mapa, Milarepa in the 11th century, his main guru was Mapa. And this is at the tantric level. Mapa was outrageous. Mapa would chuck him out of the teachings. I mean, Mapa's wife kept trying to be nice to Milarepa and stop Mapa from being so mean to him. But Mapa had the wisdom to know Milarepa's mind. So he was rough with him and tough with him and really pushed him to the limit. Now, Milarepa had confidence. Milarepa had confidence in Mapa. If you looked at that behavior, Mapa was a naughty boy, shouting and yelling at somebody. So at that level, from the student side, if you've got complete confidence in your teacher, like I'm even the reality of me with Mr. Lee, I didn't get upset when he shouted at me, because I knew, even at Kung Fu, he wanted to teach me Kung Fu. It was clear, so I didn't get offended. But that's coming from the student side. But you look at the behavior, and they need to behave perfectly, impeccable behavior. They've got to have the qualities. They've got to know what they're talking about. They've got to have, so if you check up on the person's, the way they teach, you check up on what degrees they've got. I mean, in the teachings, it's a geshe from this monastery, and then you listen to their peers, and that you see how their peers talk about them. Because this is all we can do. We've got to do our market research, you know. Now, the thing is, if you've got a very strong karmic connection with a certain Lama, let's say, and their behavior is kind of weird. I mean, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is famous for teaching until 3 a.m, from teaching in a weird way. I'm not trying to be rude to him. He's my Lama. But I mean, if you want to, you know, you'd think, well, if he teaches till 3 a.m, what kind of person is that? That's a bit rude, isn't it? You could think that's a very unhappy thing to do. And you could think he's a bad teacher, being selfish by teaching till 3 a.m. But if you've checked on Lama Zopa, let's say, for example, and you know he's valid, you won't mind if he teaches till 3 a.m. But I mean, you wouldn't check the box for having reasonable behavior. No one teaches at 3 a.m, you know, do you understand what I'm saying? But you just look at the qualities, you look at the students, you check them, you listen to their teachings, you see how they behave, and then you check your own heart, you know. And there's more to it than that, and you should look up in the Lam Rim the qualities of a Mahayana guru, the qualities of a Tantric guru, the qualities of a Hinayana guru. These are the ideal, you know. Are we communicating, Victor?
Yes, definitely.
Good.
I just want to mention that the reason I'm asking is I did met someone and you have this kind of instinct. So I don't know how, I don't want it to be an attachment.
Oh, exactly. That's really important. We must not trust that. I mean, we often in our culture trust feelings, and they can be rather naive sometimes. You can have a very close connection with a certain person, which from past karma, but that still doesn't follow that they're your teacher. It doesn't follow. Some people can be crystal clear and undoubted from the beginning. That's fine. But you know, if you're certain, fine. You know, if you're certain, then fine. But check up, be clear. And then once you've committed, for your benefit, it's best that you stick to that commitment, because, you know, like Mr. Lee, when he shouted at me, if I decided that Mr. Lee didn't like me anymore and I left class because he shouted at me, then I didn't do my due diligence properly. But I did do it, and I trusted him and observed him teaching other people, and I knew he meant well when he shouted at me. He wanted me to learn. So we've got to have that confidence. We've got to have that confidence. Like if I'd been upset by Lama Zopa, how can he be so rude and not talk to me? But I'd already checked on him. I had chosen, I knew, I trusted he was doing what was best for my mind. That kind of certainty is what we need, Victor.
Thank you.
All right, good. What else, people? Any questions? Anything at all, about anything at all? I don't mind.
Hello, Robina.
Yes, good, sweetheart.
Hello. What part of knowing that you are prepared to be a proper student is important in that?
Yes, it is. Well, just say what you think yourself. I mean, in a sense, by listening to what the teacher, you know, what do you think a proper student would be? I mean, what do you think, being qualified to be a student?
being ready to actually listen and learn, not just, I mean, kind of like what you said is being, I am willing to want to take direction.
Yes, that's right.
So,
And that
yeah.
means, first, Beth, that's why the main one is you've got to want it. You've got to so want it. For the first time until I was 26, it was the first time I wanted to make a cake. Then action can come from that. Not, oh, maybe it's a good idea. Maybe my friend said I should. No, you've got to want it. Then you open the door and then it will flow from there. That's a major one.
Yeah, I had a previous experience of picking a wrong person in a sense. And it's very interesting that you mentioned about the martial arts, because after having a bad experience in a Christian somewhat situation, it didn't deter me from ever trusting any sort of guru type situation, because I understand that they're not all like that. But it's interesting because the martial arts part actually made me really understand the importance of lineage.
I understand.
And
Yeah,
how do you go about like approaching? I mean, honestly, I've been kind of, better word, almost stalking you for a few years.
what, darling? I
And
missed the first part. What? I missed that first part. What?
I said, oh, for a better lack of words, I've been pretty much stalking you for a few years.
Okay.
And you're so helpful. Like your descriptions of things are like exactly what I've already thought. And I'm just like, basically like, how do I go about? I need you, Robina.
Okay, honey, we'll keep moving along and we'll see what happens. Keep listening,
Very well.
keep practicing, keep moving, baby.
Thank you.
Good. See, funny, another thing I was going to talk about, I was very curious, is you can really see, it's on a different tack now. We can really see when we use this Buddhist analysis of the mind, that we have the first lot of, or the whatever, we have a bunch of unhappy, deluded, I-based, fear-based states of mind. And then we have a bunch of not I-based, appropriate, reasonable, virtuous, uplifting, positive states of mind. It's such an obvious categorization, but yet in modern psychology, we don't use it. But it's starkly clear when we can see in a person who's miserable, let's say, it's not being critical. I mean, the world is full of suffering. People suffer terribly. People do terrible things to each other. But when we just look into the person's mind, hear the words they say, so just now in the morning in the New York Times, I always read my New York Times every day on my iPad. And there's always one section on Sundays. They interview a certain person and how they spend their Sundays, And there's this one woman in Queens who makes pizzas. And every word she said, she was just astonishing. Every word she said, she is going through COVID-19 just like everybody else. She's got suffering just like everybody else. She has dramas in her life just like everybody else. But she had this amazing, upbeat, incredible view. Every word she said, she makes her intentions every morning. She wakes up in the morning and then she thinks, she checks up on her goals that she promised herself yesterday. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get that. And then everything she said was optimistic. Everything she said was upbeat. She hardly said a single word that was negative, but depressed, unhappy, and fearful and worried. I'm not trying to point you out as a saint, but it's really amazing to see. Now, the point I'm making here is everybody suffers. We're all living in the same nightmare. There's dramas everywhere you turn, but some of us, because of our suffering, all we do is see the bad. All we do is wake up every morning, not know what to do with myself. I've got no one to love me. No one loves me. I'm depressed and life is bad. For example, I just had an email recently from somebody, and this is how we are. I am absolutely hopeless. I am no good. I'm really angry. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. I'm ridiculous. These words, I'm horrible. I've made a disaster in my life. I've made my wrong choices. What can I do? I'm always angry. I'm completely upset. So I asked her, tell me some of your good qualities. I understand, I said, but tell me some of your good qualities. So she mentioned a couple. By the end of the email, again, I'm no good. I'm angry. I'm hopeless. And it's very fascinating. And this is the thing, what I think is fascinating in our culture. We are so obsessed with learning about a person's life, what their mummy did to them, what their daddy did to them, because we think that's the main cause of why one of them is happy, and that's the main cause of why one of them is suffering. But as soon as you do that, you will find that's not true. Maybe the woman who's the pizza maker, she's had a lousy life. Maybe the one, who hates herself has actually had good parents. So it's really reiterating the point that we've got the unhappy states of mind and we have the positive ones. And the point I'm making is, when we can start to know that we have the choice to, like as Namazopa says, to mold our mind into the shape we want. But this is the tragedy. This is the irony and the tragedy of the voices of ego. We believe those stories. I mean, I didn't want to say to that person, I will tell you your good qualities. I wanted to see what she said herself. But before you, in a minute in the email, by the third paragraph, she's back to the negative ones again. And which ones does she believe most? It is so clear. She believes the bad stories. And the more we understand the Buddhist view about the mind, that really it's just a bunch of thoughts. I am ugly is the same characteristic. It's a thought as I am not too bad. But look at how hard it is for us to start loosening the grip of the bad stories. I mean, we ought to be utterly fascinated by this. And even when we say this, it's so powerful in our mind that we don't even hear it. What do you mean it's a thought? I am ugly. What do you mean it's a thought? I have made a disaster. So the thoughts are so intense, we can't even hear that we can actually start to change them. This is what practice is every single day, I promise. But this woman was just amazing to me. And so and she'd wait and go to bed at the end of the day. She'd check up on what goals she'd achieved. She'd check on her intentions for the next day, which people I have to call, what people I have to do, which ones I have to look after. She was optimistic. She was positive. And the photos of her were like beaming smile from ear to ear, you know. So what another point I'm making here is, it is a no-brainer. The person who's got more positive thoughts and they've practiced them, doesn't mean it's easy, they're more happy. The person who's got negative thoughts, necessarily miserable. But our tragedy is, you know, we don't realize their thoughts. We just think, oh, that's well, she's just lucky, we'll say. No, she's not. She's practiced virtue, practiced kindness, practiced good intentions, practiced helping others. And that's what brings happiness. I mean, it's so corny to hear it, especially, I know when I first heard this, I was irritated. Shut up. Just stop talking about bloody being kind. We just shut up. What about me? I'm not being mean, because we do feel bad. We do feel terrible. We have to build ourselves up. And that's why, again, that's why, for me, my mentor, Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, vivid in my mind. They're always there as the examples. It's like you're trying to learn tennis and you think you're a disaster. I can't hit backhands. I can't do anything. But you've got Federer smiling at you, egging you along. It gives you courage. And one day, I mean, with Lama Yeshe, the dramas I'd go through, the pain, the jealousy, the anger, the misery, because he was like a mirror for my mind, you know. It was like a mirror for my mind. I was always full of all this self-pity and I'm hopeless, I'm a disaster. I always tell this story. One time I was moaning about myself. And he said, this kind of a revelation, you know. He said, there's nothing wrong with your heart, dear. It's just your behavior. Because to me, I was always badly behaved, making trouble, you know. So it's like having a person there's like a rock of Gibraltar showing you is a mirror for what you can become. He was there for me, but it's taken me years to believe his words, you know. It's very powerful. It's very interesting, I tell you. But we have to start seeing our mind in that way and to, you know, to not believing or start to doubt when I think I am hopeless. It's so concrete for us. It's so absolute. It's so real that we can't even hear that it's a thought and that I have the possibility to actually question it. That's how entrenched it is. And that's why we suffer. This is heartbreaking. And the Buddhist approach is very fascinating. You don't need to know what mummy did or daddy or about your genes or your DNA. You need to hear your own mind. You hear the thoughts. So within a minute, when you know that, and I hear this person in the email, I can see exactly there's jealousy, there's anger, there's resentment, there's depression, there's low self-esteem. You don't need to know what a mother did to her. And the Queen's lady who makes the pizzas, there's confidence, there's clarity, there's kindness, there's generosity, there's love, there's humility. It's evident right there. It's so clear, but we make it so complicated in our culture, you know. The first thing we do is we think of what happened to that person. I mean, what did the parents do to them? What did the, you know, because I mean, even like I know with, say, Rosanna, she's working with a bunch of poor kids or a whole bunch of kids, right? All kinds of kids, aren't they? And I bet you know what I'm talking about. Some kids, all in the same environment, all poor, but some are more perky, some are more happy, some are more generous, and some are miserable and mean, aren't they? You can see that, can't you? And so when you can see it, that's why forget about what their parents, or often we say, oh, it's because they're poor. Well, how come a person's happy if they're poor? You know, so it's so clear that the external environment isn't the only factor, but that's what we're obsessed with, I would suggest, in our culture. So it's to see the person's mind and then to have kindness, you know. So the one who has low self-esteem, give her a hug, tell her she's wonderful. But the other kid who's really good, maybe you're a bit tougher with them, you know. That's why we've got to have some wisdom to know how to be with each other. Because in a way, we're all mentors. I mean, Rosanna's not considering herself a mentor to these people or their guru, but in a sense, she is exactly being that. She's helping all these poor people in Bronx, raising money to buy this and do that and do this, you know. So being a good friend is like being a mentor. You see each other's mind. You're not going to be arrogant and give them a lecture like be their therapist. But when we're really being a good friend to each other, we see each other. We see each other's qualities and we help each other, lift ourselves up, you know. That's the best friend to be, rather than being codependent, you know, which is how we tend to be, which is a great term for attachment. Anyway, blah, blah, you people. Got 10 more minutes. Come on, ask me some questions. Ask me some questions. Nothing more than it's okay. Yes, Rosanna. Good. Talk to me, darling.
Speaking of those children,
Yes.
I was thinking about this, so you really read my mind. The children that are very disturbed, and there are so many that I'm exposed to every day that they don't believe in themselves. They get crushed at the slightest.
Yes.
Not even criticism, just suggestion, and they lose their mind. Like on camera, they'll completely give up on themselves if they make one mistake.
Exactly.
So I often pair them with a very positive other student because they know each other. I mean, again, we're doing this all virtually.
Yes.
But we've started to work with affirmations.
That's it. Marvelous.
Where we start in the morning and they all create their own affirmations.
Amazing.
Because I don't feel using the word prayer or anything like that. I mean, right. So affirmations, and they say them every morning and every night.
Yes.
And I'm finding that they're owning.
That's it. That's it.
They love it. They feel excited about getting up in the morning.
Exactly, darling. It's so powerful. And that's all it is you using the positive thoughts and consciously saying them and having the courage to actually believe that that's possible. That's the miracle. That's the miracle. That's the miracle, Rosanna.
Okay.
Some will be difficult for them, but that's the miracle.
Yeah.
You don't make it simplistic. You let it know that there's other stuff there as well. But if we bring the thought in, and like this woman, she goes to bed at night and reminds her intentions. She has her goals. She wakes up next morning and goes off again. And that's exactly what we do. We call it purification at the end of the day, and we call it making our motivations in the morning. They're the words we use. It's exactly the same. And it's to do with thoughts, Rosanna. And you keep being like a rock of Gibraltar for all of them, showing all of them what they can become and being equal with all of them. Then that's powerful. And the ones who are ready will never forget, and they'll begin to grow from that, Rosanna. Absolutely.
I've seen growth.
That's
I have definitely seen growth.
Amazing. That's it.
Definitely.
Amazing.
I thank you for that.
Oh, pleasure, darling.
I thank you.
Good, Rosanna.
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good, darling. Well, you people, come on. It's 5-2. What else? Something else you want to say to me? Jane, good. Talk to me.
Hi. I just started watching you, but is there a really quick thing that I could start tonight? The purification. Would I start with an affirmation? I don't know the purification, and I couldn't find it.
Purification practice. Well, I'll tell you, it's a very simple one psychologically. It's done in a more formal way, but it's really got 4 steps, Jane, and it's related. It's not so much the affirmation one that can be added to it, but this is another approach. And sometimes in the West, we don't, it's interesting. It's another approach. It's looking at the rubbish. It's owning the rubbish. Because I think we can, if we own the good stuff, we can own the rubbish. So these are all in relation to the rubbish. So it's we call it the 4 opponent powers, or the 4 R's. So the first one is regret. I mean, when we think we've done something neurotic, we're mean to somebody, it twists us up inside, and we get all guilty and neurotic. So this first approach is you regret having done it, because the Buddhist Buddhist approach is everything you think, do, and say produces the person you become. So by owning and acknowledging that dumb thing you did or the dumb thing you said, and you regret it because you say the words because I'm sick of this suffering, I don't want this. So it's optimistic, and you regret whatever you've done. We do it in a more extensive way. You can do it throughout this life, the things you've done to harm others, and you regret. Then you think, well, whom can I turn to? We rely upon the Buddha as our mentor, if you like. So you don't worry about that. Or you can have that, whoever you like. Then you'd have the second step is you have compassion for those you've harmed. You think of them. Then you do some kind of, we do some proper visualization. You visualize white light coming into you, purifying all the rubbish. And then and then the fourth step, reliance, resolve. You'd kind of make a decision to change. And then you can be optimistic and make some affirmations there. I will do this and I'll do that, and I'll attempt to not bad mouth in future, and I'll try and be optimistic. You just make your own kind. It's like you're talking to yourself, these 4 steps. It's very optimistic.
Okay, so you don't write it down in a journal every night. There's nothing like that.
You can do it as you wish. That's a very Western style. Why not? We do this as a meditation, like a visualization. You can decide yourself. You can do exactly whatever method you like. Writing is a very powerful one for people. Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's owning both the negative and the positive. Our trouble is now when we're so negative, we don't even own the negative. We either loathe ourselves or we blame everybody else. But owning the negative and knowing that harms you and you're sick of it gives you the courage to want to change. And then it's easy then to own the good and the bad. And we can start to identify. I mean, the Buddha's whole view, actually, technically, is that the neurotic states of mind aren't inherent in us. They're not at the core of our being. They're just the virtues, the positive ones, the optimistic ones, they are who we really are. So this is kind of powerful, So use what method works for you, Jane. But I mean, this woman who makes the pizzas, she just had it so clear. When she lies down in bed, she checks on the goals she wanted to achieve, checked if she did achieve them, makes some new decisions, wakes up in the morning and sets her intention for the rest of the day. So this method's, I mean, this is classically Buddhism, but I mean, don't call it Buddhism. Buddha doesn't own this stuff. We can do it, but just to hear the power of our own thoughts and the confidence we can have in the development of ourselves. That's the real point. Like Lama Zopa says, we can mold our mind into any shape we like. It's up to us.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, darling. Thanks so much. Well, I think it's time to go. Enough thoughts. Enough food for thought. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, people. Thank you, Ifisha. Enjoy Bali, darling. Okay. Jam chub sem chog rinpoche ma kie panam ke yuchig kie panyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pava shog. Make compassion, good heart, grow and grow in the hearts of all. That's it, darling. Much love, people. Thank you so much. My precious ones. Thank you.